I want to get more on Robinhood's public debut now. Again, Robinhood still in the red, down about 4.75 percentage points, so bouncing off some of the lows we have already seen in today's trading session. I want to bring in Nelson Griggs, the president of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. Nelson, great to have you here with us. So a pretty exciting day at the Nasdaq today. Just curious to know, just right off the top, what your reaction is as Robinhood goes public today.
Yeah, well, it was an amazing day for Robinhood, obviously a watershed moment in terms of a company that's really looking to democratize the access to investing for a lot of the retail public. And they came along with a new model. Most private companies take 10 years plus to become a public company, and Robinhood is done in 6 years. And they're a publicly traded company now.
Nelson, I want to get your thoughts on something that Robinhood did today that a lot of companies don't do, and that's allocate a large portion of their stock in the IPO to the individual investor. Companies that do this seem to struggle in the short term, at least. I think Facebook's a good example of that. It went public on the Nasdaq almost a decade ago, and at the time allocated 25% of its shares to retail investors. Robinhood, of course, allocating a little bit more than that, I think 35%. But it took Facebook stock about a year to close above its IPO price again. What do you make of that strategy? And do you think we are going to see more companies offer individual investors stock at the ground level?
Yeah, a great question. Obviously, having just one or two case studies of this size, I think it's hard to say there's any sort of trend there. I think what Robinhood did was obviously the right move for them, thinking about their customers today. And there's always been a demand for retail to want to participate in more IPOs at the offering price. So, I think we need to see how that evolves. We do hear more and more from our customers and prospects how they would like to engage with their client base on the IPO, and that has been a growing trend. So I think it's a little early to say whether or not we're going to see more of these offerings with higher retail participation or not. But certainly we do feel there's a growing demand for it.
And of course, Nelson, with this higher individual investor participation having a bit of an impact here on the volume, how did the Nasdaq really handle that with higher volumes than we would typically see when a company goes public?
Yeah, another good question. I think when you look at the complexity for us on the IPO execution, it's much more around the number of orders than the volume. So when you do have higher retail participation, we do see higher order count. But this is something we test on a regular basis, and we obviously can handle in orders of magnitude the capacity that we needed today. I think the volume after opening, it is quite large. They offer 55 million shares, and the typical IPO would see about their offering size trade on day one, but Robinhood is far above that. So it's a very high volume day, but something we're well prepared for at Nasdaq.
That's certainly good news. Now, I know Robinhood is listing. This listing today is really another landmark in a historic boom in the IPO market. I believe something like 20 companies are going public each week this year. Tell us what the second half of the year looks like for new shares coming to the Nasdaq, and are there signs that this pace is just not sustainable?
Yeah, well, we will see. I would say that this has been a historic year, as you mentioned. We've seen over 200, almost 210 operating companies, plus another 240 SPACs. We had a very heavy offering of SPACs in the first quarter. So I would suggest there's probably a little bit of buy-side investor fatigue at the moment, and we will see a slowdown certainly in August. But at the moment, if the markets do hold up, which we are hopeful they will, September is going to be an enormous month, and we see the same sort of follow-on in October, and certainly December, November tends to be a little slower. But a lot of enterprise technology companies, there's some more consumer names of size coming out. So we're still, we're on pace for that to continue the historic run. But at some point, again, investors want to see making sure there's consistent performance vis-a-vis the overall marketplace.
Now, Nelson, I don't think it's too surprising that Robinhood chose the Nasdaq really to go public. They've said, Jason Warnick, the CFO, telling us earlier today that Robinhood really sees itself as a tech company first. And I think a lot of tech companies like to turn to the Nasdaq really to go public. But talk to us about essentially winning, quote unquote, Robinhood, at least to go public, and about the attractiveness of the Nasdaq to other companies, as you mentioned, a real crush or a parade of these companies coming to the public markets in the next couple of months.
Yeah, we work real hard on the value proposition every day. We do have over a 75% IPO win rate this year, and over 60% plus of the capital raise has come to NASDAQ. So we are real proud of that, but each and every company is unique and different, and we try to find unique ways to not only make day one special, but really a long-term partnership where the company feels like we're investing in their success. So we own our investor relations services. We help them think about their investors. We help them think about governance. We also have an amazing brand platform. So it's hyper competitive. We've had some nice switches from the competitor this year with Honeywell and others. But I would just say my 20 years here, the competition pushes us and yields a better outcome for our clients because we really engage in that partnership.
Nelson, I want to talk to you about how the IPO priced here. Robinhood pricing at the low end of the range at $38 a piece. And it's sort of been trading below that price for much of the day. I'm looking right now, and it's down nearly 5%. Is that an indication that maybe they should have priced this thing a little bit lower, that it wasn't really priced for perfection?
Well, it's interesting because I always get the question on the other end of spectrum too when it goes up 100%. Did they price it in that case, too low? So I think it is definitely an art, not a science, about pricing an IPO. They have to look at a lot of the investor indications and demand where they think the market expects the IPO to be. So, you do have over 30, this year is closer to 40% plus of IPOs have actually opened lower than their offering price. That's not normal. It's usually in the 25% range. So we're seeing a little softness now. And that, again, I think is indicative of just how many IPOs have come to market, and the market may be saying it's time for a real short-term breather potentially. But you really have to look at each and every deal individually, and it's not exactly, exact science to know where exactly to price it. But it's right around that offering price. So I think they did a nice job.
I know that Robinhood is not putting any sort of a lockup on individual investors who got in here at the ground level. And I'm curious if at the NASDAQ you have insight, transparency into seeing who is selling the stock right now. Is it mostly individual investors, institutional investors? There's been talk that there are a group of individual investors taking to social media saying, dump the stock and basically treat Robinhood as a meme stock of itself. What can you tell us in terms of transparency?
Yeah, it's pretty early to be able to tell you. We don't actually see at that level. That would go through the broker dealers. So at this point, I'd say that there probably will be a little bit more of that understanding, post-listing, but I wouldn't really rely on just social media, what's happening there, to say how the overall participation looks like. But, we just don't have that level of transparency at this point, having it be day one.
All right, Nelson Griggs, president of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. Of course, congratulations on a very successful debut for Robinhood, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.